We can't go back. We can only go better. Eddington is the latest offering from filmmaker Ari Aster, whose previous work includes projects such as Hereditary, one of the finest goddamn horror movies of the last decade, one of my favorite horror movies of the last 25 or so years. What an arrival for Ari Aster. Toni Collette deserved a goddamn Oscar nomination, if not a win, for that fucking performance. Absolutely magnificent. Toni Collette, who has had quite the career, who is really, really fucking gifted, and she deserved every bit of goddamn accolades that she had heaped upon her. And honestly, the cast was just really, really goddamn strong. And of course, that monologue that is currently on this shirt that I am wearing. Also, check out the Hereditary shirt behind me. Go to Redbubble and support local artists. But Hereditary was really goddamn magnificent. And then he followed that up the following year with Midsummer, or Midsommar, however you say it. Florence Pugh had one hell of a 2019. This was the more divisive. Hereditary probably is the most accepted of his three films. Midsommar was really, really goddamn terrific, with Florence Pugh just absolutely smashing it. Yes, bully. And then he also did Beau is Afraid, which you will not see featured here because I don't own it on Blu-ray. But that had Joaquin Phoenix as Beau, who is afraid. It's a 3-hour anxiety trip. It was certainly unique, and you honestly will never get that attic scene out of your head. If you have seen Beau is Afraid, you know what I'm talking about. If you have not seen Beau is Afraid, I would recommend watching them in order. They're not connected, but watch Hereditary, watch Midsommar, watch Beau is Afraid. I don't know if I go into Ari's latest film without seeing his previous work. So depending on how you feel about those particular films, you might be a little bit confused on how to feel about Eddington. Or maybe not. Maybe you are like me, and I know I'm like me, and if I wasn't like me, who the fuck else would I be? And you appreciate what Ari Aster decides to tackle. In Hereditary, it was family drama and family tragedy. And boy, that scene where Alex Wolff is leaving the party, boy, I need to watch Hereditary right after this review. Midsommar is a goddamn trip. So bright and colorful and cheery and haunting. The Swedes being haunting, and Beau is Afraid being just absolutely insane. Eddington reunites Ari with Joaquin Phoenix, who plays Sheriff Joe Cross, who is in the fictitious town of Eddington, New Mexico. By the way, New Mexico is not fictitious, despite the fact that everybody takes that wrong turn at Albuquerque. It was filmed there. It was filmed in Santa Fe, a couple other towns, I forget exactly where. And being that this is in New Mexico, you're going to get a lot of desert shots. You're going to get almost a pseudo-Western vibe, especially since Joaquin Phoenix is a sheriff. And he is kind of at odds with the mayor, Ted Garcia, played by Pedro Pascal. Joe has a wife named Louise, but Lou for short, played by Emma Stone, the incredibly gifted Emma Stone. By the way, if you have not seen Poor Things, please check that out. And Lou's mother is living with them, Dawn Deidre O'Connell, who's a terrific actress, by the way, lengthy career, very, very good in this. And you have other people. You have Eric, who is the son of the mayor, Matt Gomez, Hidaka. If I got that wrong, I do apologize. And you get other characters in this as well. And the reason that Eddington may end up being probably his most polarizing movie, at least in my personal opinion, is because it harkens back to a very, very long ago time, May of 2020. Yes, during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, or at least during the infancy of the whole goddamn thing, where I can tell you right now, for anybody that worked in the medical field, anybody that was considered an essential worker, and yes, a lot of places were shut down or had the mask mandates, had that kind of stuff and everything. I work retail. I work at a gas station, and it was a struggle to deal with that stuff because I was tired of the excuses. I was tired of the bullshit. I just wanted to get through this stuff. And honestly, 2020 lasted a whole fucking decade. And to think the first 2.5 months where everything was normal. I mean, it was coming, but everything was normal. Theaters were still open. The last movie that I had actually seen in theaters before the shutdown was Bloodshot. Yes, that terrible Vin Diesel superhero movie that apparently sat on the shelves for a while. So the reason I'm telling you all this is, as far as triggering stuff about the pandemic, this can be best described as a pandemic, buzzwordy-filled fever dream. There's a lot of shit going on here. It's an assault on the senses, which is by design. Now, I will admit, this movie could turn off a lot of people. There are a lot of people that could walk out. There are a lot of people that could end up hating this. I don't feel that it exactly matches Ari Aster's work. I gave all of his previous 3 films 5 stars, which is not what I'm going to give this one. But am I going to recommend that you see Eddington? Yes. Now, before I dive into why I would recommend Eddington, before I get into spoilers, you can keep your conspiracy theories, your pandemic denial stuff, and your COVID denial stuff off this goddamn page. You can keep it off this goddamn channel. You can believe whatever shit you want to fucking believe. I got it. I know many people that did get it. I know many people that had long COVID. I know many people that were dealing with that stuff. Part of the reason that my voice is at times shot is because I was dealing with a lot of stuff, and then in late 2024, yes, believe it or not, after a long time I finally got it. That pretty much is now why my voice sounds a little bit rougher, and also that's from talking constantly, talking to my job, speaking, as opposed to not speaking when you're talking, and just doing a lot of stuff and everything. That's why my voice is a little bit rough, so unfortunately, still some effects. But you can keep that bullshit. You can keep the right-wing crackpot bullshit off the goddamn page. Go to your own page and spout that stuff, because I got sick of hearing about it. I got sick of hearing people talk about, oh, I can't wear a mask. Oh, I can't breathe in. There was this, and I know it was by design, but there was a stupid old guy, and I would hear it from so many people. I heard from this like old lady that said, well, I don't care if I get sick, and then she'd buy 3-4 packs of cigarettes and said, well, you don't have to worry, lady, because you're probably not going to be living much longer. And, oh, wait, I found out that she pretty much died after about 2 goddamn years. So good job there, you dumb broad. The whole point is, the pandemic was a terrible time. And the overriding theme of this, or an overlaying theme, is that some corporation wants to come in and do something to help out this town, which, of course, would end up eliminating some jobs. The pandemic did end up shuttering a lot of businesses. But by the way, those businesses were probably going to shutter anyway. And I'm not excusing it. I'm not saying there shouldn't have been a way for, bailouts and shit to go on, and people shouldn't have been able to work. There were a lot of people that lost their goddamn homes. There were a lot of people that lost a lot of shit beyond their control. There was a lot of shit that went on there, and that was just in 2020. And then in the early stages, about the first half of 2021, and then people just started going back to normal life. It was funny when everybody decided to shelter in place for a few weeks, and then you would see that certain parts of nature were actually starting to heal, and the water was looking cleaner and everything. And then we went outside, and we started, making it worse. Yeah, I can get all on my goddamn soapbox and do a whole bunch of stuff if I want. The whole point is, if you have conspiracy theories, fuck the hell off. I don't want to hear them. You get a lot of conspiracy theories in this goddamn movie, mainly from Don, and from a few other people too. I do have to say Emma Stone wasn't utilized nearly as much as I would have liked. You also get Austin Butler in this. You get a guy named Luke Grimes, who actually is a very good character actor. And I really did appreciate Cameron Mann as Brian, who is a central figure that becomes more and more central to this story as things go on. But boy, it is an assault on the goddamn senses. Now, I never felt the 2 hour, 15-minute runtime, 2 hour and 10-minute runtime of Hereditary. I didn't feel the 2 hour, 30, 2 hour and 40-minute runtime of Midsommar. I didn't even feel the 3 hour runtime of Beau is Afraid. I felt it here. And this one was only about 2 hours and 28 minutes. There were a few points where I'm like, okay, Ari Aster, however you say it, probably could have cut a few things. There are times where I'm like, it all ties together mostly well. I mean, I will absolutely say, again, I recommend that you watch this movie. But this is a step backwards. It's not a step down in quality, it is a step backwards, where I feel like he tried to do a few too many things, where you're going to have to unpack a lot of this. A lot of it is going to not necessarily require a lot of thinking. Like, there's not a deep, deep narrative to this thing. There really goddamn isn't. There's some stuff that's going to go over people's heads. I'm sure when I talk about it in spoilers, there's going to be stuff that went over my head. But compared to his previous work, I would say this is a step down. But there are some horrifying things about this, some nice violence, some good performances, some very good tracking shots, just following everything. There was a portion where Katie Perry's firework plays, and I can fix her. I can fix Katy Perry. I absolutely can. There's always that one problematic person, problematic celebrity that you think, boy, if I ever had a chance, if I was a multimillionaire, if I ever just had one night, I could fix them. I could fix Katy Perry. But that being said, my appreciation of Katy Perry aside, the thing about it is Pedro Pascal plays his role well, so does Joaquin Phoenix. But cameraman to me steals the show because being in the background, he plays somebody that ends up, benefit. He ends up trying to benefit from this whole thing. He ends up doing some pretty good, gnarly stuff. And there are some really, really insane things that take place during this, especially in the last, I'd say, 15 minutes. It all makes sense in the end, even if, again, Aster has a few stumbles and could have cut a few things, especially in the opening hour. That being said, I'm going to get into spoilers in theaters if you want to check it out. So there you are. That's all I got to say. 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. So, there was some good political satire in this. And yes, there was the playing both sides thing. Because there were just as many people on the blue side, which I am. I mean, I'm about as liberal as you can fucking get, that were panicking a bit too much. Nothing wrong with having an appreciation and wanting your fellow person to care. Or, to care about the other and everything, and care about the health of your fellow individual. That being said, there were numerous times where things got a little bit insane. But then you would have a lot of the right-wing crackpot Trumper MAGA fucks that would say, oh, this isn't real, it's a government-controlled thing. And then they want to give over their rights and their freedoms and everything to a wannabe dictator that's literally melting away. But whatever, you guys do whatever the fuck you want, you fucking morons, you brain-dead pieces of shit, you damn hillbillies. So anyway, I won't talk to family members of mine, so you got no chance of getting through to me. But the whole thing is it introduces a George Floyd protest thing, which I know is going to be a sticking point. And I'm the wrong person to comment on it. The motherfuckers that made this into, oh, he deserved to die. No, he didn't. He didn't deserve to die. He didn't fucking deserve to die. And it's really, really ridiculous people would say that. And that sparked a whole lot of it's just dumb that happened. Now, it is not all cops. There are plenty of good cops out there. And there are plenty of people that commit crimes regardless of their race, color, creed, regardless of their age. There are plenty of good cops out there. There are plenty of good cops in this town. I'm putting up that because that's a hate group, by the way, and if you don't like that, too bad. If you are a member of ICE, I hope you have the worst goddamn year, because you deserve it. But the pandemic denier is just out in full force here, and the fact is the town is not doing all that well. Now, it's a small town anyway. But Ted is trying to make this thing work. He's trying to, just be as a mayor, do the mask mandate stuff. And however you necessarily feel about it, it did help. And I used to have asthma, by the way, so there are times where it did flare up. And wearing it wasn't fun, but I did it anyway. We opened, by the way, with a guy stumbling around, slobbering all over himself. Somebody who's a transient, shall we say. I'm trying to use the nicest word. Who's stumbling and everything, this kind of stuff. And a lot of what he's saying sounds like gibberish, but he's talking about bringing, chaos and destruction and divisiveness to people and stuff like that in no uncertain term. And there's also this, billboard for something called the Hyperscale Data Center from Solid Gold Magacorp, or Magacarp. I'm just going to assume that it's a Magacarp. I'm just going to assume it's the goddamn Pokemon. So you get the bullshit pandemic dinner. I do have to say again, Deidre O'Connell, magnificent performance as Dawn. If that's actually how she feels, she did a really good job making me hate her. If that's not how she felt, then she did an even better job making me hate her. So, Joe and Lou are at odds, basically. There's an overlying thing where there's something that happened in their past. Turned out Ted saw Lou for a couple dates back like 20-something years ago. And he didn't end up dating her because she was crazy. And then there was something about, that she that she was possibly assaulted and she had to have the pregnancy terminated. But it actually wasn't Ted. And that leads to Joe and Lou basically having to divide, and Lou leaving him, but not before we get introduced to the character Vernon, played by Austin Butler, who is some kind of motivational speaker, snake oil salesman guy that escaped from some cult where he was assaulted and whatever and everything, and there's a lot of stuff going on. It's basically all the stuff that's being thrown at you. It's like that's the kind of insanity that 2020 was. For those that want to put it out of their head, and there's a lot, I have so much brain fog from 2020. And even part of 2021. I mean, I remember seeing some movies in theaters. I remember seeing Nightmare Alley, which I think was the last movie that I ended up seeing in theaters in 2021. It was a great movie. But I have so much brain fog from so much of that stuff. Just so much of that, year period. And especially that time, because it was just a lot. You were on social media a lot. A lot of people were home. There were people that were renting movies at home. I was renting movies. A lot of this shit was going on. But Joe basically gets frustrated with how Ted is acting about the mask mandate. This old guy wasn't allowed to be in this store because, I can't wear it and everything. I can't breathe in it. Well, judging by how old that guy looked, I don't think he's going to be breathing much longer. The guy played it well. I mean, I really shouldn't say that like he's going to be watching this, but you hear that bullshit? It's like, can't breathe. It doesn't really sound like you were able to breathe all that well anyway, you freaking whining babies. So, Joe decides the best way to do this, and after basically getting pissed off at Ted, he decides to run for mayor. Despite the fact that the sheriff's office that he runs is totally goddamn, cooked. There's Michael Ward, who plays Michael. I'm just going to assume that has something to do with Michael Brown, even though his name is Michael Cook. He was a cop that ends up on the wrong side of something a little bit later, not by his own doing. And he's a guy that's supporting him. Supporters like, oh sure, if you want to do that. He's a black cop, so it's okay. We can have issues with the sheriff's office because we have a black guy on our force. Which kind of was there were a few lines about that in there. Guy is the other, cop. It's really only a couple of them. There's this one guy there's not a lot of a police force here. And by the way, the girl from Swim Fan, Night Swim, was in this. Amelie Hoferl, I think is how you say it. She played Sarah. I wondered why I recognized her. She did not get to shine in this as much as Night Swim. She was good in this, but Joe ends up going full MAGA crazy with his, all the stickers and all that stuff and everything. After basically Lou ends up bringing Vernon over. Dawn also comes with him. They come over to have a dinner. Vernon has a couple people with him. And Lou finally gets frustrated when Joe basically does a video and basically is talking about how his wife was AR'd by Ted, which wasn't true. She said that she was assaulted, but it wasn't by him. It was by somebody because she's one of many millions. I don't necessarily know what that means. They didn't really dive a bunch into it. Maybe she was part of this cult with Vernon, and that's why she was all nuts. They, again, don't dive into a whole bunch of this stuff. But basically, she runs off together with Vernon. Now, there's one point on the sticker thing, on all the stickers and signs that he basically makes, that he puts on his vehicle. Joe does as, you're being manipulated, but not Y-O-U-R-E, but you're being manipulated. Which right there shows the education level of all the pandemic deniers. So, lots of buzzwords, protests. George Floyd protests show up about 50 minutes in, and we do get where they're protesters are screaming in the streets. There's stuff about, buildings being destroyed, but we don't get to see a lot of the actual destruction. implying maybe it's the citizens doing that so they can, have their way of life and not have. Now, there's rogue people doing all kinds of crazy things. Don't get me wrong. There was destruction of property that shouldn't have been happening, but the people were pissed the fuck off. So, Michael is a cop that basically knew Sarah. Now, either they used to date or they used to go to school together. They kind of try to present both sides of that. She's like, you're a black guy doing this. You should be standing with us and stuff like that. But then she'd immediately shrink back. So they were, again, trying to both sides all this stuff. So it was a little bit busy. And then there is a point where the mayor is having a political disturbance, or having a noise disturbance, after it was proven by Lou in a video that Ted did not do that to her. So, great tracking shot following Joe. He keeps shutting off the stuff, the firework by Katy Perry, and that's pretty nice. And then he ends up basically getting slapped by Ted a bunch. And that doesn't necessarily go over all that well, because he kind of just walks away. And, well, then, earlier on, it is revealed that Joe is asthmatic and takes asthma medicine and inhaler. And he actually got in a fight with that bum guy after denying the mask stuff and everything and stuff like that. And then the allegory, it can strike at any point. He gets in a fight with the bum who's all coughing and sneezing and slobbering and all that stuff. And that time he didn't get it. But then he sees that the bar is broken into and the guy's drinking, and he just decides to shoot him. Now, he suddenly starts really wheezing. Like, not doing well. So maybe he didn't get the first time, or maybe the symptoms took a bit to get going. Now, it's pretty obviously he's either got it, or it is amplifying his asthma, and he actually doesn't. Maybe he's not positive, but it caused something, because they show that he got a COVID test later, but they never actually show what the results were. The implication is it was real, or that it was positive. But then he ends up. So he shoots that bum guy, the transient, dumps his body in the goddamn river. Apparently they have rivers out there. Maybe it's the Colorado River. I don't know. And he ends up picking out the shell casings, that kind of stuff. Then Ted is sitting in his house. He's wondering why Eric has a girl's purse here. He's trying to keep his son safe. Then suddenly, a bullet. And Ted gets shot. Eric ends up getting shot. And it is Joe. And he's using a long-range rifle, because Michael actually was doing target practice with a long-range rifle at one point and trying to get better at it. So Joe uses that to basically frame Michael. And he even takes it's like a pocket watch thing or whatever that was given to Ted and puts it in the car, in the squad car that Michael had, so that frames him. But then Michael ends up escaping jail at one point, and I'll get into that here in just a little bit. We get a little plane that's arriving, that's got people that look like they have all these, protest signs, like, oh, they're going to be on the good side and everything, on the proper side, where people actually just want less division and everything, and want innocent, non-white people to stop being killed. But it's pretty obvious maybe these are, corporate spies or something, just because they're flying an awfully fancy plane, or riding an awfully fancy plane. So we then get Brian, and Brian, by the way, was implicated in all this. Brian, at one point, or was involved in all this. Brian, at one point, tried to talk to Sarah and others about her, or about, a book that she read and stuff like that, because he was Googling it, because he's trying to fit in, trying to worm his way in all this stuff. He was part of the protests. He was part of the reason that Michael ended up getting thrown in jail, even though he said, he sounded like he could murder somebody, but he didn't do it. He hadn't done any of that stuff. And then, basically, Brian is still in the background doing some more stuff, which I guess factors into something like, you never know how people, could have been like a Rittenhouse situation for all I know. Rittenhouse, that freaking, pig-faced motherfucker. That kid deserves to be made fun of. Actually, he's a young, stupid man, is what he is. And don't cross state lines with a goddamn gun to do this stuff and everything, because he was a coward that cried. Because he knew what he did. So, then it turns out that the shooting took place across the county line. Pueblo County, Pueblo, Colorado. Colorado, easy for me to say. Because New Mexico and Colorado, by the way, close to each other. Pretty close to each other. I mean, you'll see. You just look up on a goddamn map. They used to actually, Amarillo, Texas, used to actually run, shows, or the Funks used to run shows in Pueblo, Colorado. Kind of weird. That's a little bit of wrestling history, 20-something minutes into the review. But there's a guy named Officer Butterfly, not named after a Sugartown song. Or whatever the name of that sound was. You're my butterfly, sugar baby. I forgot the name of that group. God damn it. But Joe ends up taking over, and we got authoritarianism and everything. We got talks of all the, the corporate stuff, but Joe wants to push back at that. He doesn't want to have this corporate stuff come in. Joe gets more and more sick. He can't get a hold of Lou. Lou has blocked him because Lou is just cutting him and her mother out of her life. And Joe is not doing all that well. But goes with Guy to try and find Michael. But Michael kind of is trying to grit through teeth, tell him not to come closer because they can smell gas and everything. There's this drone up here. Turns out there's a vehicle over there, and they all get blown up. Michael gets blown up, his arm, all that stuff. It's crazy. It's nuts. And Joe is completely rocked. He gets back to the house with Dawn, and this is where things really kick into gear as far as weirdness, as opposed to what it is now. And this is me describing it the best way I can. But Dawn ends up, I believe, getting shot at some point, or at least near, but not fatally. He then gets chased with a gun and everything by various people, but he then falls through the roof of a store, gets a BFG, is the best way I can describe it, with a bunch of ammo, and is just shooting people. Shooting indiscriminately. It's pretty awesomely ridiculous. And there you go. Then Joe, he runs out of bullets eventually. I think he took one or two out based on the shots, even though it was a little bit dark. And one runs up while he's trying to reload and literally stabs him right in the goddamn head. Ow. And Brian is there. He's filming. He stabs the guy that had stabbed Joe. And he's like, I saved Joe, making it look like he was trying to save him and stuff like that, but just wanted to make himself out to be the hero. So then he gets into politics. They have him with Marjorie Treason Green, who, that's her name, by the way. If you think that she is a good person and good for politics, you're a fucking idiot. You don't deserve to have children. But we see all the social media stuff. But I did appreciate them showing everything on the phone. I appreciated that. That was pretty nice. But the data center opens. A lot of jobs are wiped out, but Eddington's life goes on. But Joe Cross needs 24-hour care. We even get to see Joaquin Phoenix's dick at the end of the movie for whatever reason. His Phoenix penis for some reason. His Phoenix. And then he sees on TV, because he's confined to a wheelchair, Lou is pregnant and with Vernon while he's doing his touring revival stuff, whatever. And Michael is suddenly back, as formed as possible, staring at the new data center and all that, implying all this shit happened, all this ridiculousness, all this fever dream stuff, innocent, black people, various people of various races were getting killed and targeted and everything. And now he's seen what the town became just within literally the blink of a goddamn eye. That's how I'm going to take Eddington, that is. It could end up being a whole lot of nothing. I may just be reading too much into it, and I may have just done a long video talking about how Ari Aster maybe just has his head up his own ass right now. But personally, I really liked it. I just didn't love it as much as his other stuff. I'm still going to give it an A-. I put a review up on Letterboxd. You can check that out. But yeah, overall, it was something that I thought about more and more, especially at the end, as the credits were rolling and everything. I was compiling Letterboxd review while I was walking to my car and doing all that stuff. The more I thought about it on the way home, the more I realized that I do like it. I just didn't love it as much. They could have cut a little bit of stuff out. But it definitely is a movie that will get people talking. Speaking of which, you talk about it in the comments, unless you're a MAGA fuck, and I don't want to hear from you. And you really, quite frankly, should be silenced. You idiots. That being said, if you are an intelligent person, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Rentlin. Until we meet again, happy trails for all the smart people to you.